Hey YouTube, welcome to Car Audio Fabrication. In this video we're going to be building this ported box. When building a box in a trunk, it's important that we make proper use of the space and that the box fits nice and snug. But one of the worst issues that can happen that none of us want to admit has happened to us before is we build the box and then it doesn't fit. In this video I'm going to be showing you guys a foolproof method for measuring out the trunk so that you don't make that mistake. I'm also going to be showing you guys how we can make preparations for a false wall beauty panel. We're going to be covering up these subs, but we want to make sure that we have a nice, robust mounting platform. Let's get things started. In order to start our box build, I first need to measure out the trunk, but I'm going to do so in a special way that will guarantee that the box will fit. First, I record the smallest width between the two wheel wells and record that value. I also double check and make sure that this width will actually fit through the opening of the trunk. Next, I set a straight piece of wood in the trunk to help me obtain my height. The board helps me identify what the line of travel is for installing the box so I can get a real accurate idea of what the height will actually be to slide into the trunk. Now I will measure the depth I would like to use. The depth is basically defined by how much of the trunk I'm willing to give up, but I also want to keep the box face far enough back that I have enough room for a beauty panel. Now here's the key point. Once I've determined that depth, I measure that value onto the piece of wood and mark it. This allows me to then measure the available height at that mark. There's nothing worse than building a box that doesn't fit, so learn how to do this correctly. Do it once and do it right. I really want to make sure that you guys understand this, so if you have questions about this or anything else in this video, comment below and I'll reply. Now that I have all my measurements, I can create my box design. I'm going with a slot ported design that's 2 cubic feet tuned to 33 Hz. If you need help with a custom box design for your install, you can purchase a custom design that I personally create from my website. I love helping you guys build boxes and it helps me make more videos and support the show. The first cuts I make are the two front baffles and the rear of the box. Next, I adjust my fence and cut the top and bottom of the box. I also repeat this process for the sides and port walls of the enclosure. I'm also making 45-degree corner pieces that will fit inside the box and add additional strength and improve the airflow. With all my pieces cut, now I need to do some layout work. I use the dimensions from the design in order to mark out my cuts for the port as well as the center points of the cutout holes. Here's a cheap, simple trick that you can use. Use a piece of cardboard and a push pin in order to draw a nice, clean circle. I stack the two baffle pieces in order to transfer the center hole perfectly using a drill bit. I will use these holes as a center point for cutting my circles. First, I place my baffles on my homemade router pad that I made in a previous video. Next, I insert the pin of my Perfect Circle router tool into the center hole. The Perfect Circle router tool is attached to my router and allows me to adjust the radius of cut via a knob that slides back and forth. Now that I've adjusted the tool to the proper radius, I can turn on my router, plunge into the piece, and make my cut. I want to take a second to give a quick shout out to my new Patreon supporters Josh, Brad, Ben, and Zedric. I've needed a plunge router for a long time, and thanks to them signing up to support the making of this content, I was able to get one. Big thanks to the whole CAF Patreon support team. Now that my speaker holes are cut out, I've moved on to rough cutting the slot port. I leave a little bit of extra material so that I can use a flush trim bit to make the cuts perfect. I attach wood pieces to the front using template tape and then copy the straight edges on the router. I trace this onto the second baffle board, rough cut that piece, and then use the first baffle as my new surface to once again copy on the router. With any subwoofer box, it is important to add bracing to keep the sides of the enclosure from flexing and stealing away valuable acoustic energy. Here, I'm making a brace design using an arc template. You can see that I first sketched the design, rough cut it using a jigsaw, and now I'm sticking the template to the piece using template tape. I also keep plenty of straight scraps on hand which allow me to create the straight sides of the brace. After I get all the pieces laid out, it's over to the router table once again where I copy the profile using a flush trim bit. I like the look of this brace. Now I like to use the router in order to add some roundovers to some of the pieces. The roundover bit basically turns a hard edge into a nice rounded edge. There are different size roundover bits, and in this case I'm using a 1/4 inch. I use this bit on the port end pieces for improved airflow, and also on the brace for the same reason. For the front entrance of the port, I intentionally raise this bit a small amount as it will then cut a hard edge that I can use as a guide for cutting the carpet if I'm covering the box. Next I turn my attention to assembling the enclosure. When building any sub box, make sure that you use plenty of wood glue and completely cover each mating surface. I like to use an old gift card or body filler spreader in order to do so. The glue is what really adds strength to the joint, so I use a brad nailer to attach the pieces together. You can also use screws, just be sure to pilot drill the wood so that the holes do not split. I always attach my bottom and back pieces first, and then attach the sides. Here I use a scrap piece to make sure the edges are good and square before shooting the brad nails. For good clean glue application, I use this caulk tool to smooth the glue into the corners and remove any excess. Now I add my port 45 into the corner and secure it using brad nails. Since my port is 2 1/4 inches wide, I've made these two special pieces. They'll be used as a guide once I assemble my port. Here I'm adding the port end brace piece. This piece is purely just to add a little bit of extra thickness to the end of the port, and it makes it a little bit more strong. Next I attach the two port boards together. I add strength to these and secure them even more using another 45. Next I carefully position my brace piece to the port assembly. With the guides I cut earlier in place, I can now accurately position this port assembly into the box. You can see here that I carefully angle one of the pieces, which allows me to rotate the box onto its back. I can now shoot nails through the bottom of the enclosure, permanently attaching the port assembly. Additionally, I can use those spacers as a guide so that I know exactly where I need to shoot the nails. Once again, I need to go back and clean up all the glue using this caulk tool. Next I apply glue to these surfaces in preparation for attaching the front baffle. Once the baffle is positioned in place, I apply more brad nails. Next I add my additional internal 45s. My design had very limited room for 45s, so I knew I'd have an area where the 45 overlaps the mounting hole. When this occurs, I load a top bearing flush trim bit into my router. Guys in the car audio industry call this bit the death bit because the cutting flutes are more exposed. This bit should always be handled carefully. This bit used the mounting hole as a guide and cut the 45 away. Next I need to apply my second baffle. I design all boxes with a dual baffle because it really strengthens the mounting surface for the subwoofer. It also allows me to flush mount the woofer. Plenty of glue is essential for sticking the two pieces together. I always like this phase of the project because I can take a look at the internal geometry. The brace is holding the front wall strong, all the port geometry is nice and rounded. This box is looking like it's ready for some base. I apply the top board, but now it's time to make some preparations for the mounting of the beauty panel. Whenever I'm building out a trunk, I want to have a nice mounting surface for a beauty panel to easily bolt to. It's important that this surface is spaced away from the subwoofers so that they don't make contact while playing. In this case, I'm doubling up layers of 3/4 inch MDF. I apply a roundover using my router and a roundover bit to the tops of these pieces for a more finished look. After once again applying a full surface coating of wood glue, I apply brad nails. It's important that I precisely mark center and mount these boards exactly centered upon the enclosure face. This will make layout work much more simple as we build the beauty panel, as I have a good reference back to center. Now I can fit the enclosure into the trunk in preparation for the next step. If you guys are new to the channel, I have a whole video playlist about this build. You can check it out over here. I know that car audio can be really confusing sometimes, so I've made it my personal mission to help you learn. I'm actually on this journey myself, and I feel that the more we can help one another, the better. I've learned a lot of things from you guys, so if you have something you want to add, be sure to leave me a comment down below, or if you have an additional question, leave me a comment down below. There's tons of really smart guys in this community. Maybe they can help you out as well. Now, some exciting news. For those of you that are returning subscribers, you may have noticed that there's a very new look to the channel. I have some really big plans for how I want to continue to bring you guys free car audio videos. But since I'm a one-man operation and I don't sell car audio gear and I don't own a car audio shop, I really need your help in order to succeed. If you would like to see how you can help with the making of these free videos, be sure to check out the link to Patreon down below. As always, a special thanks goes out to Emmanuel, Nathan, Rory, Eddie, Richard, Mark, Truman, and Jerry, along with all the other Patreon supporters. Thank you guys for all your support. Alright guys, stay tuned for the next video where we're going to be building the false wall and doing all of our cool, interesting template work and actually building in this trunk. Thank you again for watching this video.